People, welcome to Newspaper Breakdown. It is the 5th of the 4th. Hope we're all fine. We've got 5 news stories. Around 80% of UK employers pay men more than women on average, a percentage that has worsened since the start of the mandatory gender pay gap reporting 6 years ago. The UK's gender pay gap has not moved at all in the past year, despite claimed efforts by organisations, officials and industry regulators. The difference between men's and women's median hourly pay, expressed as a percentage of men's pay, was 12.12% in 2022-23, up from 11.9% in 2017-2018. The average pay gap for sectors including transport and administration increased last year, but it was the highest amongst education employers. Around half of the top 100 with the highest gender pay gaps in 2022-23 were in that sector, and the average pay gap was 23.2%, which seems fucking high. The financial sector was 22.7%, which is the second largest gap, with banks being the largest in that particular sector. Banks admitted that the lack of women in senior positions contributed to the large divide. Of course it did. And this is it. I mean, the problem is it will only change if you have more women in better paying jobs, and there's no reason why women can't be in better paying jobs, but maybe, just maybe, we have to do more than saying fucking yes queen and slay. If that's the best that we can do to push equality, then we'll never get equality. We don't fucking deserve equality, do we, really? And I know it's all empowerment and everything, but I would think, and I'm not a woman, so I can't really speak for women, but I would argue that that empowerment would be equality, not fucking yes queening. But, you know, I'm a loser, ain't I? So who knows? Who has a fucking clue? It's only my conceptions. The House of Commons Standard Select Committee has recommended a ban on foreign government funding for all party parliamentary groups, saying that APPGs that received substantial payments from outside entities were most problematic. The recommendation follows a report by the committee last year, which found significant risks of improper access and influence, fucking if, you dickhead, by commercial entities or by hostile foreign actors through APPGs. This is a continuation of our parliament's corrupt. There are currently over 700 APPGs that have been formed and are set up by MPs and peers on an ad hoc basis to investigate and campaign on issues of interest, normally their own monetary interest. The Chinese group, set up to promote closer ties with China, has drawn questions over its large corporate donations. Whilst hospitality provided to members of the APPG on Qatar has been scrutinised by transparency campaigners, there is no evidence that either of these two have done anything wrong, but you have to be concerned, because why on God's green earth are foreign companies giving lots of money to these people? What's the reason? Because they want something. You don't give money away for free. You do it because you want something. There have been allegations of MP sexual impropriety whilst on overseas trips with APPGs, but of course there has. We know they're all dodgy. Anyway, a couple more stories. A survey has found that 1 in 3 young teachers in England are skipping meals and spending less on food as their pay has failed to keep up with the rise of cost of living, with others taking second jobs. 34% of teachers aged 29 or under have said that they had been forced to skip meals to make ends meet, with 1 in 5 saying that they had to take second jobs on top of their full-time jobs. This isn't an MP taking a second job and going, right, or I get paid 80 grand for doing fuck all for my constituents, I may as well get an extra £1 million a year for 6 fucking hours work a year from some dodgy bastards that I'm going to lobby for to help them get more money. This is a full-time teacher having to take a second job to afford food. These figures underline the vote by the NEU members for 5 days of additional strike action. Also tells you quite a lot about why the unions rejected the 4.3% pay rise that was offered by the government, because it's not enough. It's just not enough. More than 1 in 10 young teachers said that they expect to no longer be working in education in 2 years' time, with excessive workloads, a lack of trust in the government, as well as pay among the major reasons for leaving the profession. Teachers also report severe problems with recruiting, with some vacancies unable to be filled or needing to be advertised multiple times, resulting in posts being empty for extended periods and classes being taught by non-specialists or cover teachers. This is a big old effect on education, and if we are at a point where 1 in 10 young teachers are saying, I'm not going to be here in 2 years, that is only going to make more vacancies, isn't it? That's not going to stop vacancies. That's not how someone leaving works. And so we're going to have more vacancies, which means that our children are going to get worse educated, which means they're going to grow up to be even dumber. And they're already dumb. They'll grow up to start voting fucking Tory or something. Start believing Andrew Tate or something like that. That's what happens when you don't get enough education. You start believing fucking Jordan Peterson or Andrew Tate, or you start thinking that the fucking Earth's flat or some pointless bullshit like that, who you go onto the internet and believe everything you fucking hear because you're an idiot. That's what a lack of education does for you. The UK Statistics Authority has scolded Sunak and Immigration Minister Robert Janik for using, Jenrick, sorry, that's his name, fucking Jenrick, for using inaccurate figures to back up dodgy claims about asylum seekers. Shock and horror. In December, Sunak claimed that the asylum backlog of 132,000 cases at the time was half the size of the backlog left by Labour in 2010 when they left, implying that the backlog was about 260,000. In the same month, Jenrick and the Safeguarding Minister Sarah Dines told MPs that 450,000 and 500,000 legacy cases had been left by the Labour government. So fucking hell, I mean, they've obviously done the figures. This is a scandal. They've done a fantastic job. The juries have done a fucking brilliant job. Labour left like 500,000 legacy cases in a backlog. And now we're at 132,000 at the time. Incredible work by the Tories. They should be fucking praised for it. I'm always against them, but if they do something well, I will stand them up. Let's see what the rest of this story says. The UKSA found that the statements did not reflect the position shown by Home Office statistics, and the asylum backlog in 2010 was 19,000. Meaning the number of outstanding claims had actually risen by like 9-fold, like a high amount. This is the problem. They're either lying and they know it, or they're so fucking incompetent that they should not be allowed in their position of power. Because if they're this incompetent, the only way they could possibly be more incompetent if every single one of them was replaced by a fucking toddler. And even then, they wouldn't be bribed as easily. that may not be true. I reckon you can probably bribe a toddler. Not that I would ever try. I'm not a fan of children or people. I mean, children are people, aren't they? So I hear. Always grow up to be a disappointment. Not sure why I'm rambling now. Last story, anyway. The Parliament Spending Watchdog has warned that the HMRC are not paying enough attention to a new tax on digital firms earning in the UK, and therefore failing to scrutinise potential avoidance. The PAC warned in a new report that British tax authorities, fucking hell, am I writing? Considering I know I'm going to read this, I really should have clearer handwriting, but I fucking don't. This looks like fucking Orf Antitis with its authorities. Jesus, you thick as pig shit wanker. Anyway, the PAC warned in a new report that British tax authorities are at risk of ignoring whether the digital service tax is designed in the best way, because they only intend for it to be temporary. The tax imposes a 2% charge on digital revenue generated in the UK, and was introduced in April 2020 as a way to stop the world's biggest tech companies avoiding tax by shifting their profits overseas. The DST was introduced in 2020 after years of complaints that multinational tech companies like Google, Amazon, we know the ones, were minimising their tax payments by registering their profits from UK sales in low tax regions like Ireland or Luxembourg. And it aimed the DST aimed to eradicate that by taxing revenue and not profit. The DST will be replaced by a global tax on digital profits that is being negotiated at the moment by around 400 companies and the OECD. The global tax is a brilliant idea. If all countries actually came together and did a tax worldwide for these companies, it would be so fucking good. And so good for all of the companies. It would be fucking brilliant. But I don't have faith it's going to happen. Anyway, that's the end of the stories. I will tell you now, I'm going to be holding off on doing these for a while because I have a show to write and it isn't written. And I've got previews in Brighton in May, and I need an hour's show by then. And this going through the news, picking news, researching news, writing the news, doing this, it takes a bit of time, and I don't have it at the moment because I've got shit to do. If you're on TikTok, I do one news story in under a minute, and so you can follow me on there. And you can come down to Comedy Under Siege in Aldgate, where I run a comedy night, and that's fun. So, but I will be back doing this at some point. So I'll catch you later. Bye.